Calling the council work session meeting of March 12th to order. The first item on our agenda is approval of minutes from our March 5th council work session meeting. Is there any amendments to the work session meeting minutes that were provided to you all? If not, can I hear a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the March 5th council work session meeting minutes say aye.
Aye.
The next meeting minutes for approval is the council afternoon workshop meeting on March 5th. Is there any amendments to the meeting minutes?
One question, is that the closed session that you're referring to?
No. This is the afternoon workshop.
This is the minutes. I move for approval of the work session minutes of March 5th, 2013.
Second.
Just for clarification, these are the meeting minutes where we met with the Upper Bay Counseling Support Services and Mr. Powell from the Cecil County Area.
Correct.
Are you with me, Alan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there any? There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Then all those in favor of approving the council afternoon workshop meeting minutes for March 5th, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next meeting minutes are the council closed session meeting on March 5th.
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Call the vote for the meeting minutes that are presented for this council closed session on March 5th. All those in favor say aye.
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 Is that, Diana, did you say aye, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carried unanimously. The meeting minutes are approved for March 5th, council closed session. Next item on our agenda for today is a discussion regarding resolution 09-2013 regarding enterprise zones to redesignate and expand enterprise zones in Cecil County. Lisa Webb, the Economic Development Director, is here to talk to us about this effort. Go ahead.
Good morning, thank you. Appreciate this opportunity to share with you some work that we've been doing in the office. Before I do that, I do want to introduce some of the staff that I have here today that you may not have met yet, some new staff. Mary Kuna, to my left, is actually been here for a few months. She's been focused on this application for many months, right? Working with planning and zoning, David Black, and others to ensure the maps are all correct and updated. She's also been updating our database, organizing a lot of our information, and also trying to get us a little more updated on our technical social outreach. How's that? Is that a good way to do it? To my right is Susan O'Neill. This is her second day on the job. She replaces Melissa Sadowski, if you recall. She will be focused on a lot of the activities that Melissa had done in the past. She also has recently worked for the town of Perryville. She was also working on the enterprise zone for the town itself, so she comes with a lot of that information as well. So I want you to welcome our new employees. We're really excited to have them on board.
Welcome.
So I want to share with you, this is a little bit of background about the enterprise zone. I think I shared this with you before. I just want to make sure you had it all. You have a presentation in front of you, a copy of this presentation for your benefit. But the Maryland Enterprise Zone is really a program, it's a joint effort between state and local governments. And this is really something that was set up by the General Assembly many years ago. They appointed the Department of Business and Economic Development to actually coordinate this program with jurisdictions, and they manage it and do all the reporting for that. So it was created in 1982. It provides tax incentives to businesses and property owners located in jurisdictions in some of maybe the worst distressed areas in the state. The intent of this was to attract capital investment and job creation and improve the quality of life in those areas. You may have a better look in your handout for the jurisdictions. There are 28 of them that are designated enterprise zones throughout the state. 6 will expire this year. These are the expiring zones located throughout the state. We are one of them. These are the existing enterprise zone locations. This application that we will be putting in does not change those locations, but it does expand a little bit. The second map actually shows the expansion. And it's just as, if you look at number 7, which is Principio, it actually shows you, excuse me, it actually shows you the areas of expansion for that site. Let me back up a little bit. The qualifications in order to be a designated enterprise zone has to do with its distressed area. I think we show that in the application pretty clearly. But these distressed areas are based on unemployment. So these areas are within or impacted by those census tracts that are in those zones. So they also have to be either contiguous properties or along the state road infrastructure roadway. As I said, the state does a good job in capturing a lot of the investments that has been throughout the state. And if you can see, Cecil, on your handout, maybe a little clearer, it's the 5th line down. It shows a pretty significant capital investment in this county based on enterprise zone. So we're doing a good job attracting business into the enterprise zone. So here's the qualifications. It's a designation that lasts for 10 years. Cecil County obviously is eligible to reapply for redesignation and expansion to our existing zone. And we've based it on the average rate of unemployment. The average rate of unemployment is an area within reasonable proximity to an area that's applying for a redesignation. Must have an average rate of unemployment that's at least 150% of the average rate of unemployment in either the state of Maryland or the United States, whichever the average is greater over an 18-month period. We've done those calculations, so the census tracts that apply are noted there as 305.05, 309.06, 309.05. So these are the mapped census tracts throughout the county. Some of the census tracts are fairly large, so those areas adjacent to the census tracts were also negatively impacted by that unemployment area, so we've included them as well. That's a justification that we do as part of the application process. The application itself is located on our website. I think I mentioned that last week, so it goes into much greater detail and depth of information. So these are, what are the benefits to having an enterprise zone designation? Real property tax credits, which are eligible to the property owner, and it's based on an improvements or capital investment to that property. And you can see that the credit is, they take the base assessment, and then at the end of the capital improvements, that's the top assessment. And whatever that differential is, they take 80% of that, and that's your credit for 5 years. And then that decreases by 10% for the following 5 years, until the very last year, which is 30%. There are also income tax credits. I will say that this is probably the least utilized benefit of the enterprise zone across the state. It's a little more difficult to manage, and it's really for the business owner, for those hiring employees within that area. There's certain qualifications for that. They have to be full-time employees, which means they have to work 35 hours or more a week. There's also a the credit itself is $1,000 per job, but if it's an economically disadvantaged employee, there's a $6,000 credit that's taken over the course of 3 years. So those are the benefits to the business owner and the property owner. Those are the two tax benefits for an enterprise zone. The map that in your handout shows Triumph Industrial Park. There were no changes to this zone. We are putting it in just as it is. It shows the parcels within the enterprise zone and the zoning of that enterprise zone. I should point out that this is a business incentive, so that only businesses can take advantage of an enterprise zone credit. It's not for residential purposes. This is Broadlands. This is at the intersection of an interchange of I-95 and 279. So Broadlands Business Park is also included. There were no changes to this area. It is the same as the initial application. Zoning. And then Peninsula, which is located in Northeast. It's not within the municipality of Northeast, but along Route 40. This enterprise zone has not changed either. It will remain the same. We're putting the application in as per the initial application. Principio, when initially they came in, they were prepared to have the portion of Principio that is north of Route 40 for their industrial construction. They've come in and requested to add on to that some parcels south of 40 that they will be prepared over the next few years to develop into industrial commercial. This shows the parcels and zoning. Our enterprise zone application is actually due on April 15th. As you can imagine, we are also coordinating the application resolutions that will be required from each of the municipalities, from Port Deposit, Perryville, Northeast, and Elkton. We will submit one application, so we have to have all their resolutions. We already have Perryville, Town Perryville has already submitted theirs. We're waiting on the other municipalities, and of course, the county's resolution will go with the application as well. Just so that you know, future properties can be added to this enterprise zone by resolution if they meet the qualifications, and we would be prepared to do that for any property that may fit that qualification in the future. Our goal here is to meet the first deadline for the state to ensure that we have a seamless transition from enterprise zone to enterprise zone. We don't want to lag at all in that offering. That's the end of our formal presentation, but I'd be happy to answer questions and give more clarification as needed.
Do many of the council members have questions? Go ahead.
Are major utilities available to all of these different enterprise zones?
When we designated the enterprise zones, you know, they don't look at the infrastructure that houses it, because the goal for an enterprise zone is to attract business to that location. And sometimes it's a partnership between the business and the local government to get the utility there, to encourage that type of activity. So I would say that there's a lot of infrastructure already there, but not complete. And so an enterprise zone actually helps to come into partnership to invest in infrastructure by all parties. It's an encouraging tool.
I came to Cecil County in 1978, and they've been talking about having infrastructure in place on the growth corridor for, would that be 35 years? Now, do you think that would be an incentive for businesses to come if they had some water and sewer?
I believe that infrastructure is always one of those important elements for construction. I'm not gonna say that it's not an incentive, it certainly is. But for this enterprise zone, I think the enterprise zone is also an incentive. So it's a good partnership for everybody to come together.
I'm just trying to basically illustrate that companies can't have businesses if they don't have the necessary structure to have the business.
That's true.
I think it'd be very important for the county to try to establish those infrastructure needs that most businesses need today. Plus, not to mention that you can reduce your nitrogen deposition into the waters and bodies, because the utilities are much better or more efficient than septics could ever be. Thank you.
And these zones are also within the priority funded area and designated growth area for the county.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm happy you added that point about focusing our investments in the priority funding areas. As you know, I've been very outspoken about investments that are not in the priority funding areas. Lisa, are there current industrial parks, enterprise zones that have water and sewer that are vacant?
Are there, I'm sorry.
Are there current industrial areas, enterprise zones that are vacant that have infrastructure?
I would say yes, there are.
I think the answer is that there are parcels of land within all these enterprise zones that are undeveloped. But I also think that even the developed parcels can be added to and modified and expanded.
Once again, we agree, and I think that's what we should be doing, is focusing our investment in that area rather than in non-priority funding areas. Also, we had spent a long period of time on brownfields legislation, and I would like to see what's happened with that. That was a great incentive to take back these industrial areas, incentives for new developers to come in, and get help from the state to take them back and to get them active again. Could you look into that, please?
I sure will, thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with Councilwoman Broomell on the brownfields. There are some, particularly on Route 7, there are some portions of some of these parks that are designated, but there are other properties in brownfields areas that we should seriously consider to be added in future efforts to our enterprise zone areas.
We will look at those and see if we can get them to qualify.
And I had brought up previously that it needs to be a good communication between DPW and economic development to prioritize further expansion of infrastructure, so that we're ready. Where do you anticipate the demand for development for businesses to come in? Please be in communication with DPW and let us know what we should be pushing for in the next investment for infrastructure.
Great, thank you.
Any other council member have a question regarding enterprise zones?
One last question. What are the primary reasons why a business would locate in a particular location?
In general?
In general, yes.
I would say our office gets a lot of requests for proximity to I-95, proximity to Delaware, proximity to Harford County, so on the extremes. Also proximity to workforce. They want to make sure that they have a qualified workforce capable and ready to start work quickly. And incentives. A lot of them are looking for the type of incentives that I just spoke about, an enterprise zone or other types of grants or monetary figures or tax abatements.
How would you feel that how well have we competed with neighboring counties based on these criteria?
We are sandwiched between two jurisdictions that have a significant amount of infrastructure and a significant amount of workforce and a significant amount of funding. We do not compete on their level. It is very difficult.
So basically we need a better workforce, we need more funding, and we need the infrastructure.
That's very well said.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this matter? thank you, Lisa Webb, and the other staff members in economic development. Hopefully we'll be working with you soon. And this resolution is scheduled for consideration at our next meeting on the 19th, right?
There's a public hearing.
Public hearing.
Public hearing is scheduled for March 19th. So if any citizens have thoughts or comments, they can come before the public hearing and express them regarding this resolution. All right, the next issue on our agenda is a budget transfer request. Council Manager Massey, would you bring us up to speed on this request, please?
Sure. I'm asking for a transfer within our budget items from the professional services to transfer a total of $3,100 into our travel, training, and telephone for unanticipated, unbudgeted items.
And can you tell us why we need to transfer this money?
Well, our travel money was basically used up primarily for MACO conference, and the same for training and education. This budget that we're in now includes when the county commissioners were in office, and so it also included the stipend that the county commissioners received, and so that was a big chunk of the budget that we were paying for, and so those things put the numbers over. And their telephone, there was a purchase of a cell phone for the new me, and so that was not anticipated. The cell phone for me.
Oh, okay.
Is that correct, the amount?
Yes.
After transferring the funds, what balance does it leave for the rest of the year?
Well, in travel, we'll have a little less than $2,000. The training just brings up, there'll be very little left, and it just covers the cost of the phone. So basically, we're not anticipating any other costs through June. In those line items, with the exception of travel, we'll have some money for mileage and some conference money. So our MACO summer conference would be included in the following fiscal year.
Jim, for my benefit, would you go over the IRS guidelines for travel?
Well, okay. Because I was not familiar with how the county allows travel reimbursement, I did some contacting within our government. And first of all, the Donna Nichols provided a personal car usage that basically talks about employees that use their own personal vehicle to travel for government business are entitled to reimbursement for tolls, parking, and mileage. When submitting a request, the employee deducts their normal commuting mileage from and to work. And so then I asked Mr. Robinson, the question that is a little gray is that council members oftentimes leave from home and attend a meeting, either within the county or outside the county. And then, of course, the question is what constitutes your work, place of work? And so whether you could be reimbursed to come to this government center for a meeting. And so Mr. Robinson provided some comments that basically he feels as if that the council is compensated for their public duties, and so that it would include coming to this office, so that it would be considered commuting and not entitled for reimbursement. So anyway, so then I went to the IRS just so that we have a sort of a clearer picture. So the IRS does define a tax home as generally your tax home is your regular place of business or post of duty, regardless of where you maintain your family home. So I have the IRS details. It's a book that you all could take a look at. It's, sorry for the small print, but I basically tried to get a handle on what mileage is reimbursable. So it looks as if for council members, you can be reimbursed to go from your home to a destination either within the county, with the exception of coming here to the government center, or if you're at this office and you go somewhere, then your mileage would be from this office to there and back. So we tried to clarify it, so in the future, if you want to turn in mileage reimbursements, of course we cover the cost if you travel for parking or tolls, things like that.
So I have a Department of Aging meeting, which they meet here.
Joyce, would you speak into the mic?
I'm sorry, is it on? I'm sorry. If I come into a Department of Aging meeting at night, that's not covered.
Right.
I just wanted to.
This is your
My
place of
space.
work, so we wouldn't, it's considered commuting.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. I have asked the question once before about what qualifies for reimbursable travel expenses, and I've gotten a different answer from the Department of Finance, Ms. Saxton. Robin from our office had checked in on it. Apparently, the discrepancy is regular council meetings or commissioner meetings, and over and above other meetings that we have as appointed to a committee. So, you know, we're getting two conflicting answers here, and I think we need to have further discussion just to make sure what qualifies. And especially now, you know, before I didn't request any reimbursement with a significant cut in our pay, and no benefits, but my responsibilities are just as much as they were before. I think this is another unintended consequence of this charter form of government, which isn't realistic. You know, we need the tools to get our job done. Something that we need to have a discussion about. We need to make sure that what we're requesting for reimbursement is correct. So I would request that we get these gray areas clarified.
Well, the problem is that you said that somebody else asked somebody else.
No, I said who,
And
I
got a
asked
verbal
for-
opinion, so I think that the IRS rules that are in writing take precedences over other people's opinions, and I think that we should write those guidelines into our rules and procedures.
I think there are people on staff that. Excuse me.
I think that we should write the IRS guidelines into our rules for reimbursement for our members of the council. And if we don't wanna do that, and if we wanna have a special reimbursement that's contrary to the IRS rules, then we can write that into.
That's fine,
So,
and I would
but
like
it-
to have a discussion, that's my point exactly.
Then here we are, we're ready to have that discussion right now.
I need to find out why I was given different information. Well, where was she coming from? She might have some insight that wasn't considered.
So, we will, all right, then I'll give you plenty of time to investigate that, and in the meantime, I would recommend we all read the IRS provisions that have been provided to us, and come back next week to discuss how we want to proceed with reimbursement, and again, I think that whatever applies to the council should apply to every employee of Cecil County. I don't think that we should have special rules for ourselves, that if we have a reimbursement request, that we should request them and have the same rules that apply to everyone, in every department, for every employee, whether it's from the county executive all the way down to the public works department or libraries or what have you. So maybe we should also talk to our human resources department to see what their policy is for employees. Can you check that out? And you want to talk to the treasurer's office and talk to them and
The
someone?
reason I'm a little agitated is because this could have been done, we could have had this conversation in advance and we wouldn't be here right now. Everybody should have been on the same page. So that's what we need to do. Let's have this conversation and find out where everybody's at. And I agree, it should be consistent.
Does anyone else have any comments regarding reimbursement for vehicles?
I just have one comment. Do we have to be careful if we go outside the IRS guidelines? I mean,
No,
do we have to stick
I'm
with
not recommending that. I'm suggesting that if a council member chooses to go beyond that, then I'm open to hear what their offer
it? We
is.
won't get in trouble for going beyond that.
Well, I think that if we have a policy and it's in writing, and we decide that we're going to reimburse for something other than what the IRS says, we can do that.
Just
If it's clear.
Yeah, no.
But I'm not, again, I am not suggesting that, I'm just offering that as an option for discussion.
I didn't think you could.
But also, when you're seeking advice, you go to the experts, you think, and on our staff, or, the department on the county executive staff, as it turned out, to find out what the answers are. And so, when there's two different answers, we need to find out where the discrepancy is. So it was sought, it was, the answers were sought. It just amazes me that this is also being done on the other side, and that there wasn't any.
What do you mean by the other
The
side?
IRS, seeking the IRS, why, Mr. Massey, what provoked you to, look into the IRS? Why didn't you go to, the finance department to see how, reimbursable expenses?
I actually did. I can give you their responses. I mean, this is an area that you're looking at, that I was familiar in Harford County what we did, but I was asked to find out what's
And that's when
county policy.
Mr. Robinson said it was a gray area, and that's what I heard you say.
Right.
Okay, and now we're further clarifying that gray area.
Well, I wanted to find out what is the county's policy for employees, so Ms. Nichols from HR gave us that in writing, and that's in our personnel manual. And then I asked Mr. Robinson about specifically the issue of if the council has a meeting here that's above and beyond the council meetings, could that be considered that's not a commute, or must it be considered a commute? And that's a good question. And he says it was a commute. But, that is a question to consider.
Okay, well, I encourage us to figure this out.
Do we want to proceed with the budget transfer, or do we want to postpone the budget transfer until we get clarification of the reimbursement expenses?
I would prefer to wait until we have clarification. And I also have just a couple questions. The first one.
Okay, let's, what's the consensus of the other members?
Should we allow the budget transfer of the telephone, since I'm sure Mr. Massey has his telephone and whomever we bought it from would need to be paid?
Okay, do we want to amend it for telephone only?
Well, the $800 for the telephone, is that, how many other employees have that deduction?
They don't have a deduction, I think this,
Reimbursement of something.
I don't think this is a reimbursement. You
No.
receive a county phone.
Right.
And so the county phone has to be, the cost of that county phone has to be allocated to the council.
That was just a cost.
How did they come up with the $800 telephone?
Yeah.
The cost of the phones and the plan that you have could easily equal $800.
I should have put it on my plan. I have 4 phones and unlimited coverage. I'd gladly do it and make money in the process. Could you justify the $800 for telephone? Is that 1 year service? I'm not trying to be critical.
I didn't, when I was hired, you wanted me to have a cell phone, so we ordered one, and I wasn't aware of the cost. Maybe Mr. Wine could find out from the IT people if that's the normal cost.
What did you get, a smartphone?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the standard, it was processed through IT, I can look into it to see what the plan is.
Does that include a year's worth of service, Mr. Wine?
I'm sorry?
Does that include 1 year's worth of service?
I believe so, I'll check it out with Scott Mesner.
Okay.
Well, just remember, this is coming out of our plan. I have just a regular flip top. I know some of you have a smartphone.
I bought
My
my own
own.
phone,
Yeah, exactly. We have
and
our,
I pay for my own.
yeah, I think it's,
Well, it was part of my contract, and I guess the reason I got a smartphone is so that I can respond to your emails when I'm not.
And in all honesty, if $800 includes the phone, the physical phone, and the service, I think that's a very reasonable amount to pay. But $800, which is presented as a telephone, is an awful lot.
I'm certain that it covers the service
Well,
charge.
see, it doesn't say that.
All right, well then, in that event, because we're asking for clarity on the items, on the budget transfer, let's just postpone the entire, consideration of the budget transfer until we, get more information.
I would like to suggest one other thing, Mr. Lodge. Is I think that we have more than one issue here, and that the IRS rules are the IRS rules. I don't know that they directly apply to the council, but the thing is, we need to certainly clarify what is a reimbursable expense for gasoline. I mean, there's things on this particular list which I don't know if they're reimbursable, I don't know if they're business, or I don't know if they're political. So we ought to basically have a clearly defined list of what the county should reimburse the employees for, us being employees also, as opposed to what we will not reimburse people for.
I'm sure it's clear that it's not council business that, or commissioner business.
Well, Mrs. Broomell, I did not mean to do this, but I mean, seeing how you've asked, we have an APG Oktoberfest, which basically has a 24 miles associated with it. We have an American Legion Veterans Day program in Rising Sun, which has 20 miles associated with it. We have numerous trips the same day to somewhere. For example, on 7/16, 7/16, 7/16, there's 83 miles, which basically are Planning Commission, and STEM Cell Fair. Now, I am not saying that these are not legitimate charges. I just want to basically know this is correct and this is not correct. Now, these might all be right, so don't think that I'm accusing of anything. But I think
If you had concerns, you were more
I'm
than
asking.
welcome, yeah,
so.
to ask.
This is the reason I'm asking this question. I have never used the credit card. I was going to use it once and decided to put it away. I have basically gone to many of these places that you've attended, and I paid my own fuel. Now, in my opinion, if I'm doing something which is for the county, and strictly for the county, the county has an obligation to compensate me for my expenses. But they do not have an obligation to compensate me for anything which is not within, let's say, the globe of my official position. And these are the things I would like to clarify. And once again, this is not directed at you, so please do not take this personal.
Well, I can tell you that I've asked numerous times what was valid and what wasn't. And given the cuts that we've experienced in our positions, and there's a lot of travel that I still hadn't claimed on there. And was surprised to hear, I thought we hadn't claimed anything before as a board of commissioners, but there was a commissioner that had been claiming mileage.
Who was it?
Which was her, I'm not gonna say who,
Okay.
but it was their prerogative to do so. And I had pursued, I wasn't sure what the rules were, that's why I asked.
I know, that's why I'm doing
Yeah.
this right now, is so
So-
people have a clearly
But
defined set of rules.
please, Ms. McCarthy, if there's any, you're welcome to call me at any time, to bring it out now, I'm
I just found out
questioning.
about it on Friday afternoon, I don't, this list of expenses goes back to and includes July 5th of last year, when you were a commissioner.
Yeah.
Now, I just look at
They
these
said
things.
that's what I was qualified for reimbursement
Who
expenses.
basically said that you were qualified for these things? Which person in this government basically gave you the authority? That's all I'm asking. Real simple questions.
I asked Lisa, I asked Robin to find out, and she had checked with Lisa Saxton.
Okay, to clarify, I have asked, council manager to develop a new form that will not only, designate the, mileage, but also the purpose and explanation on why it was county business.
Right, and just
So
to
the-
clarify, that's what I thought I was doing. And, for it to be challenged now is, it's fine. It could have been challenged, just asking me, where did I get my amount? But you chose to do it like this.
I did
That's
not
fine.
challenge you. I was
You
presented.
just did. You just
This is
did.
Broomell, look at the date on this thing. Let me put my glasses on.
And now you are
This
again.
presented on 2/26/13. This is basically still has wet ink on it. I knew nothing about any of these charges. No one told me a thing. I told you right from the very beginning, when it came to submission of charges, I have never submitted anything.
It was in your possession
It
last
could very
week.
possibly have been, I told you it was, but I
Okay.
don't read everything the day I get it.
It was highlighted in
Diane,
advance.
let's move on. We're gonna get clarification on what are the reimbursable expenses. We're gonna get clarification on, the form that we're gonna use for the future. We're going to get clarification, and we're going to put it into our policy, or not our policy, but our rules and procedures manual that we're going to next. So, we have a amended rules and procedure form or policy in front of us. Mr. Massey, do you want to bring the council up to speed on the changes and additions that you have put into this rules and procedure?
Sure, at the last meeting of the council workshop, there were some issues from the rules of procedure that we wanted some legal opinions on, and so I just had received this yesterday, so I want to distribute it to you. I couldn't get it in the packet before now because I just got it, so this is the questions of, I guess I'll just let you pass them down. We had asked the county attorney, could a council vote on issues before it in a non-legislative work session? And if yes, then are there limitations on the type of issue that may be voted on? Basically, what can we do in a non-legislative workshop or work session? Then we asked, could a council member call into a legislative session or a work session or workshop? And if so, can the council calling in engage in discussion and vote on issues? Then we also ask if the members of the Citizens Budget Advisory Board were required to file a financial disclosure statement. So this is the response that Mr. Allison provided, just as I said yesterday. So basically, based on these things, we had a little more additions that we didn't put in the rules of procedure. So I have a packet for everybody that I'll pass around.
Based on your perusal of this legal opinion, do you believe that there are modifications required of the rules and procedures that we've drafted so far?
We had proposed the procedure regarding how how the council would not be permitted to vote in absentia at the legislative meetings, but could in work sessions and the workshops. So it's consistent with what we had discussed. We had talked about, let's see, the other issue of what we could discuss or vote on in the workshop sessions, and it was consistent with what we said. As long as it wasn't legislative, you could, it's
Yeah,
procedure.
list examples, I guess, budget amendments, in our own budget. Any other items you can think of?
Any kind of discussions, preliminary, if you want to, like what we're talking with the rules of procedure, who's going to mayo, who's interested in being a representative or liaison. You can discuss those kind of things and come to consensus. You can always go to the legislative session and ratify or do it in a proper meeting, but basically it's, you can't pass any kind of legislative actions. You couldn't do a bill. You couldn't pass a bill, or you wouldn't, it would not be appropriate to vote on an amendment to a bill or things like that.
But the rules of procedure, aren't we going to officially adopt by resolution ultimately?
Yes.
So we couldn't vote on that, and
Well, right. You can vote on procedures. Which form do you want to use in the rules, and basically decide. But then when you actually introduce the rules of procedure, the final version, then you need to do that in legislative session.
Are there any other questions based on the information that's been provided to date? I guess.
I haven't had a chance to read it.
Right, I guess that's my opinion too, that we've gotten a good bit of information here that we need to review. We have a draft copy of the rules and procedure that we need to review. We have the legal opinion from the county attorney on the questions that we had, and then we have the definitions that we should review. And I guess I'm of the opinion that we need to take this and review this as homework and be prepared to talk about it again next week. Anyone have a different opinion? We can certainly ask our council manager to do any further investigation or analysis between now and then. Any other thoughts from any other council members?
These general provisions, these are proposed then?
Right, just to add a couple definitions there, and that was just, my impression was last time we talked about what's emergency legislation and emergency meeting, and it was just, I thought it might be helpful to define that.
Are these, this list, are these things that you want to add that are not in here now?
Yes.
So what you're throwing this out to us for our consideration to add
Yes.
these general provisions into the draft.
Yes.
Okay. So we should review them and see if we want to move forward with those also. And I guess you've also provided a rough draft of the new mileage report.
This mileage form is what the county presently uses, and it seemed to have all the information that would be helpful. So I thought maybe just use the same form.
Well, I think I understand. Item E, 1-6, reimbursable expenses.
So
E.
what page, what section?
1-6.
1-6. E, okay.
So this is, proposing to adopt formally what is already practiced. Because I believe this rate is what is currently being reimbursed.
Because I wanted to make it clear
Right.
what's reimbursable, I just thought it would be helpful to put that in there.
But on this, we need to add, formally, what is valid travel expenses then. That still has not been.
The
determined.
definition.
Well,
And I would agree, that's a hard thing to define. I just,
the definition that was provided to me is different from what you received, so we need to clarify what we want to adopt, is the way I see it.
Yes, can I encourage you to determine a definition that would suit you and others and bring it, or share it, hopefully before Tuesday, so we can discuss it and massage it to make it work for all of us.
Well, if we have a sit-down conversation, I guess it needs to be done here, really, with all the information on the table at one time.
Mhm.
I think we can do that.
Okay, good.
Which is what I'm proposing.
Are there any other questions or discussion regarding the rules of procedure draft? So we have more work to do on that matter. All right, moving on is our council comment section. Councilman Dunn, would you like to start?
Nothing this morning, Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Broomell, do you have any council items?
Yes, there was a newspaper article in the Cecil Whig about a doctor in our community that, his license had been suspended. And, I've, asked through Stephanie Garrity to find out from the Board of Physicians, the state of Maryland, what is the status of his license here in Maryland. Very concerned with the article I read. And this is the problem with what we've been experiencing with the pilgrims. So, this needs to be addressed.
I agree. Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Bowlesby, do you have any thoughts, comments?
I just want to alert everybody that the Athena Award breakfast is coming up at 8:30 a.m. on Thursday at Chesapeake Inn. There are 4 nominees. Stephanie Garrity is one of them. Karen Holt, and the other 2 names that left me. I should have written them down, but there are 4 women who are up for that award, which is a very prestigious award, and I'm planning on attending on my own, not as part of it.
I guess anyone that would like to attend that,
Just contact the chamber.
Chamber of Commerce. Councilman McCarthy?
In support of Councilwoman Broomell's comment on the doctor, who basically was dealing pills. There's been a number of doctors in Cecil County and throughout the state of Maryland to do this. They obviously make a great deal of money, and it seems that the states don't really do too much to them. It might be well to draft a letter to the American Medical Association and basically see if there can't be reciprocity amongst many states concerning people that basically do these drugs. Also, it might be that the license should be revoked. I'm certain that most of this is generated through just simply greed and an easy way to make some money. I do know for a fact, or I'm very, very close, so please don't hold me to a half a percentage point, but probably less than 5% of the doctors in this nation are probably responsible for more than 96 or 94% of the medical malpractice. The AMA is a very, very powerful lobby, just like the Trial Attorneys Association. I mean, they basically circle the wagons and cover their little behinds, if you know what I'm saying. So until you can basically bring power or pressure to bear, you're not gonna see much change here. The other thing is we have no authority to basically regulate these people. This is done at the state and national level. But I do believe that their DE, which is a drug enforcement license, basically be withdrawn from them if they are found guilty of these types of crimes.
Councilman McCarthy, I'd like to follow up. I did ask that very question, if we had reciprocity with the information they had obtained in Delaware, and the answer that came back was yes, they did.
Okay.
And what concerned me was he initially had his license suspended in 2011. Dr. Shaw had his license suspended in Cecil County and asked how many of his patients could he cover, and he said, as many as you can send to me. He is currently on the board or affiliated with Union Hospital. I don't know how much information they're aware of, but they should be checking on the status of their physicians that are working with them. So, on many different levels, we need to find out where is the communication breakdown and to hold people accountable for this. Also, with the federal government, I couldn't agree more. I would encourage us as a board to invite Congressman Harris to have a meeting with him. And I asked him in a public forum already, what are you going to do about this problem? And he said, I'm going to leave it to the local jurisdictions. You're exactly right. This needs to be handled also on a federal level.
Well, that's where you get your DEA license. You cannot get it from a county, I can tell you that.
Well, would you support a meeting with Andy Harris?
I've already stated I would.
Yes. Do we have, yeah.
Now, getting on to some other little issues, these are not as important as the drug issues, but on March 6th and 7th, the CC, that's the Chesapeake Clean Water Coalition, the TML board as we know it, provided testimony in support of the ostrich dredging waters of north of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and also north of the Kent Island Bridge. This was Senate Bill 795 and House Bill 1244. So they're in support of that. This is your Clean Water Coalition. Also, they're basically starting to put into place a coalition to basically intervene in the relicensing of the Conowingo Electric Power Plant. The state of Maryland annexed the line and filed basically a 6-month extension so Maryland can review the Coastal Management Act and how it would impact on all of this stuff. Also, after a phone call to Mr. Chip McLeod, I was finally able to get information which basically he said he would provide me months and months ago. So hopefully, if anyone is interested, I'll be more than glad to provide to you all of the information considering what the Clean Water Coalition is doing on your benefit to basically push back the state of Maryland and their initiatives. So,
I wanted to add something to that. The Clean Water Coalition has also, they have submitted testimony. You can go to FERC relicensing Conowingo Dam, and all of the documents that have been submitted are there for the public to be able to read, to open up. And I've had a special meeting, I don't know if any of you remember, but Congressman Gilchrist said for a free cup of coffee, he'd be willing to sit down and review, what he would recommend for contacting the federal authorities. And did discuss that with him. And once again, that's another topic we should have with Congressman Andy Harris. What can he do to make the Conowingo Dam spotlighted? That it needs to be, the sediment behind the dam needs to be addressed now rather than later. And Chip was instrumental in sitting down as well. So we need to put pressure on the FERC relicensing. And I've asked Secretary Griffin where we're at on that as well, and he, that'll be a good topic when we have the meeting with the Bay Cabinet, which is, Mr. Massey, do we have that date?
It has not been confirmed by all the secretaries, but the 19th at 7 is when at least one of the secretaries has confirmed, so we're still waiting for confirmation.
That, along with the WIP costs, should be, one of the highlights of our
Well,
conversation.
it should be, but only after 3 months of being here have I gotten any of this information.
That information has been forwarded by Ms. McCann.
I-
I don't know if you're not getting your emails again, but,
Yeah.
it's been forwarded.
All right, is there anything else you have by Councilman McCarthy?
Here's a picture of the plume, the sediment plume that comes down the river. On a number of occasions, some of the oyster beds which did exist basically were buried in 2 feet of mud. You can call it silt, but it's essentially mud. And just for your knowledge, the Susquehanna River Basin drains an area of ground which is far bigger than the entire state of West Virginia, even if you pulled the mountains out. I mean, it's the second biggest watershed, I think, in this nation.
Thank you. All right,
I did want to add something as well. On March 16th, there is a meeting, with the, Pierce Creek community.
It's this Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
It's at Bohemia High School.
it's enlightening how the state and federal government, preach clean the bay, control sediment, runoff, and that we have to spend lots and lots of money to do it until it applies to them. This is, the tables turn, and I would encourage all Cecil County citizens to come out and, to watch this play out. And it's at Bow Manor, at what time do you remember?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. Oh, 9 a.m.
9 a.m. in the morning, yes.
Okay.
It's on Saturday.
just a reminder that we alluded to, that Cecil County has membership in both the Clean Chesapeake Coalition and the Rural County Coalition. Both of these groups are made up of multiple counties in Maryland and looking out for our best interest in trying to keep regulations and costs to the taxpayer low, but yet still clean up the bay and pass reasonable, rational laws. Last night there was a meeting, a teleconference with the Rural Coalition, and they reviewed quite a few bills pending in Annapolis, and whether or not we, the counties, want to take positions on these bills. And we did take issues on, or positions on several that will impact the counties. And just how interesting it is, there's a bill pending that was submitted by Montgomery County that would make libraries, public safety, fire support, and other departments subject to a maintenance of effort, which means that you could never cut their budget. You could never, ever cut their budget. Once they received a certain level of funding, no matter how dire the county budget was, you could never cut the budget. And so at the end of the day, the local jurisdictions would have really no authority to even establish their own budget, because it would be almost self-determined by state law. In any event, I'd like to remind the council members and the public and anyone else that has an interest that there is a practical parliamentary procedure seminar on April 6th in Severna Park, Maryland. It's open to the public. You don't have to be an elected official. If you have any interest in parliamentary procedures and how to run meetings more effectively, it costs $25 and it includes your lunch and your handouts. So it's a really good deal. So anyone that wants to learn more about parliamentary procedure. Now, what I found out is that there are people that they just live and die of parliamentary procedure. And they know the ins, the outs, they test themselves, they challenge each other, and they want to teach others on how to have more effective meeting. So I would encourage the public, I would encourage council to participate in this training session. I've also asked the council manager to add on to our agenda and future work session meetings, kind of a council manager report for items that he thinks that we need follow up on, and give us a heads up on future issues that we, the council, may need to address. So I'll give him that opportunity right now if he has anything that we've missed this morning that he thinks that we should know about.
I was a little concerned with the Pierce Creek dredge, because there's been some confusion about the meetings. You spoke about the one at Bohemia Manor High School. Now that is by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
No, that meeting is a meeting put on by the citizens. And I don't even know if the Army Corps is even gonna be there.
I asked them, she said that they were gonna be there as, I think the Maryland Port Authority will be there too.
Okay, but this is a meeting that's sponsored by the citizens that live in the vicinity of the dredge facility.
Okay, well, we have been asked by the public about when is the meeting that the MDE is having, and that is not scheduled.
Right, wait a minute,
That's the
you're
big
confused.
one.
There's two different meetings. You're talking about the sludge application.
Right,
meeting.
right.
We're
That's
talking
what
about
got
the dredge.
confused.
The dredging is a pending issue. And the answer is that that is still pending, the permit to move forward. And I don't know that the Army Corps of Engineers has even said that they're going to absolutely, positively add additional dredge material. They want to. At the end of the day, they have not put a proposal on the table for anyone to consider. In my mind, the Army Corps is still evaluating their options on whether or not they're going to add more dredge material to the Pierce Creek site. And that's where we stand as far as I'm concerned officially.
There needs to be approval from the Maryland Department of the Environment, and I think they should be attending these meetings. They're absent. I don't understand it, because there's a lot of really good information and concerns brought out. So that's part of the process as well.
The local citizens in the Pierce Creek area are taking a proactive approach to fight this potential project. I think that's what they're doing on Saturday, is trying to bring to the attention the focus and trying to get public interest in it, and let the public know about it. That's what I think is happening. Now, as far as the sludge application, land application of septic wastewater sludge, that application is still in process, but there has been no notice of any, and I don't want to call it a public hearing, it's a public information meeting, and we don't know when or where that's going to be yet. That's still in the court of the Maryland Department of Environment. Do you have any other new information on that?
No, I know that there was a little confusion about the two meetings, and we tried to get this straightened out. So, because I think the notice was given to council that the meeting on the 16th was sponsored by the Army Corps, and that is not true.
The sludge application, I thought it was the Maryland Department of the Environment.
That's
That
right.
was, okay.
It's a completely separate agency. But we have not heard anything back. We did request a public information meeting, and we have not heard back on when or where that will be scheduled yet.
And I thought I had contacted the person, that was, I don't remember his name, but he confirmed that it would be a public meeting, that there could be comment period.
I'd like to get that in writing on the format of the meeting, when it's scheduled. What will be the format? Will the public be able to ask questions? I have seen lots of state agencies, you walk into a room and they have those stations where you can go and you can ask individual questions, but you cannot really make public statements or public comments.
Could you confirm that, Mr. Massey?
I spoke to him, and he said it's an informational meeting, and they will not be taking testimony from the
Really?
public.
Well, that is directly opposite from what I received. I will give them another call. Very interesting.
All right, is there any other comments from any of the council members before we adjourn? All right, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Moving adjourned.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, our next meeting this afternoon will be with the Citizens Budget Advisory Board at 1 o'clock.